So welcome to the 20 meeting of the Energy Charter Independent Accountability Panel. And in starting the meeting, I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of country throughout Australia and their connections to land, sea and community. We pay our respect to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people today. You may know some of the panel already, but I'm the new chair, Claire Petrie, and I was the former Energy and Water Ombudsman in New South Wales. Cassandra Goldie, you probably know, the CEO of ACOS, and Andrew Richards, the CEO of Energy Users Association of Australia. So over to you. Thank you, and I'll leave you to introduce yourselves from Energy Queensland. Thank you.
So Rod Duke, I'm the CEO of Energy Queensland. Recently started in this role on the 1st of April, about 6 months ago.
Mark Algie, Non-Executive Director on the Board of Energy Queensland.
And I'm Michael Dart, the Executive General Manager of Customer.
Thank you, that's great. And it's great to have a board member, Mark, to talk to us as well.
Pleased to be here.
Yes, we're very pleased to have you. Look, I'm going to open up to you in a moment, but just to acknowledge in starting that we absolutely, everyone referred to it in their disclosures. How could you not? This unprecedented year that we've faced during 2020 with fire, floods and the COVID and the impact of that on the business and your customers. So it's had an impact, and I'm sure you will want to talk about that. But I'd like to open it up to you, first of all, just for you to highlight any features of your 2020 disclosure, both positives and negatives, and then we'll open it up to questions from the panel. So over to you, Rod, or whoever wants to start off in terms of your disclosure.
Well, look, perhaps I'll just start with a few introductory comments. Thank you for the chance to participate in this process. We appreciate that it's a very useful thing to be able to share with people what we've been doing and what we are continuing to do in terms of serving our customers' interests better, and having an opportunity to respond to questions that the panel may have is something that we welcome as well. You're right, it's been a tough year, and for me in a new role, new industry. I've been 35 years in the gas industry around the world. To be in a distribution and electricity retail business here in Queensland is quite a change. So please forgive me if there's still things that I don't fully understand. I beg your indulgence. A few things that I think we're particularly proud of this year that we've been able to do for customers with the assistance of the state government here in Queensland included the fact that during the deepest, darkest days of the COVID-19 crisis, that we were able to deliver a cash rebate of $200 to every retail customer, both in the regional areas of Queensland where Ergon Energy is the electricity, but also the government's policy allowed all other retailers to provide that rebate in southeast Queensland and other parts of Queensland they serve as well. So that was $200 for every mum and dad type consumer for every domestic connection, but $500 for every business. And every business effectively meant people who had small enterprises, people who've got an ABN, were able to qualify for that $500 rebate. That's subsequently been followed up with another $50 rebate. What I'm particularly proud of is that of all of the retailers operating here in Queensland, that Ergon Energy was the first and the fastest actually delivering those rebates to our retail customers at the time that they needed many of them needed that money the most, or that relief the most. So I guess that's probably been a real highlight of how we've been able to respond to the needs of customers. That, along with a process of no forced disconnections of people for non-payment of electricity bills, which is something, of course, the broader sector has done, and of course the fact that we're also making sure that the people who need assistance with hardship programs and the like, that we're maintaining a very active dialogue with those customers to make sure that they're looked after and that they get through this difficult period of time in the best possible shape, and that they don't accrue an unassailable level of debt through buying an essential service like electricity. So, Mark or Michael, I'm not sure if you had other comments that you'd like to give an introduction.
I think from a board perspective, and I think I speak on behalf of all the board members, we continue to be focused on our communities and in particular our customers. It's a central feature of what we do, and I suppose the strength of that comes through not only during each of our board meetings where we get to see through our MPR, our reporting process, how we are tracking in terms of how we service our customers from a quantitative perspective, but at a risk and compliance committee level, we also have reports at each of those committee meetings, where those statistics and in particular customer complaints are tabled in order that board members not only understand what complaints are flowing through that process, but what proactive resolution is in place to make sure that those customers are managed in an appropriate fashion. So I think I said this last year, and it's the same thing this year, and that is customer and communities as a whole becomes a central feature of everything we do, our decision-making process, especially at a strategic level, and that I think flows through the organisation. And we are on a journey, and as you can see from our maturity framework in the disclosure report, we are making positive progress. We are not there yet. It's a journey of 1,000 miles, and we are proactively making sure that our customers are well administered and looked after, especially during situations like the COVID-19 situation we're presented with at the moment, in order that they can continue, to operate and live in an affordable and fair way.
Thanks, Mark. Michael, did you want to say anything?
Yeah, so just to echo those comments and add a little bit more, take the feedback from last year's disclosure report and the comments that we received from the panel, have really considered the maturity assessment framework and responded to that. Continued to develop our Voice of the Customer program so that we could get direct insights from our customers, and then include that as part of our work with our employees across the business to ensure that we could pick up any issues that there might be that our customers are feeling in terms of pain points and responding to those. We also advanced in some areas around our financial inclusion action plan that we produced last year and has now been activated. And since COVID, we've also formed a partnership with PowerLink to develop further some financial support as part of COVID-19 to ensure that through our partnerships with I Can Learn that there's more financial counselling scholarships funded by our organisation. Through COVID, we repositioned our support packages for our partnerships to help local community groups in need, because there's a significant footprint across Queensland. We wanted to ensure that we could demonstrate that we were there from a financial perspective and also to support community groups right across the state. So as Rod said, it was really fantastic that we were able to leverage our partnership with the Queensland Government to deliver rebates quickly to our customers right across the state. And that was significant. It also meant that it took a little bit of the focus off our contact centre from an inquiry perspective, so that we could actually deal with the more complex situations that some customers, particularly businesses, were facing. So that was something that was fantastic for our customer-facing employees, as they could see that that was a real need for our customers. In some of the other areas, we've had our continued focus on safety, and we've increased our communications around some areas where there's been significant incidents across Queensland. Including particularly in agriculture areas where there's been connection with power lines, ensuring that we have other ways that we can provide communications to those customers. The board's also been very focused on what it is that we're doing to help decarbonise our network and our business, and so they've been considering our transition there and our policies around emissions as well. And of course, we've had record number of connections to the network as well. In Queensland, we've seen an increase in solar installations, which is great, seeing customers taking control of their energy use, but importantly, us supporting that delivery for them by delivering connections as quickly as we can. Areas where we might not have done as well, in Queensland, we're still very focused on helping with the metering challenges that we see with the rollout of power of choice, that might not have gone as well as you would have hoped in every single customer segment. So we're working very closely with our government partners and others in order to deliver the customer experience that they want. So that's probably just a few of the highlights over the last reporting period.
Thank you, all of you.
Look, I just follow up with one comment, please, Claire, and that is that through the course of the year, Michael himself was appointed as the Executive General Manager of Customer, so reporting directly to myself as the Chief Executive Officer, and of course a very integral part of our executive committee, so it gives you an idea of where the organisation where I place looking after customers. A little unclear, but I don't think that it's sitting with just.
Are you having trouble hearing at the moment? Okay.
Yeah. Thank you, and always hard. Anyway.
Cheryl might need to go on mute because I think our screen's telling us that there's some feedback there.
Okay.
Go ahead, Claire. That's better. Yeah.
Yes, that is better. Michael, you anticipated one of my questions, and it was about what other things you didn't get to during the year, apart from the metering issue. Were there any other areas where you just ran out of time or puff, or any other reason that you would have liked to have gotten to but weren't able to?
I can certainly that off, and if anyone else wants to, feel free. So I think we talked about our progression on tariff reform across the business as well and within the industry. So obviously we've just been through our AER proposal, and that was a very constructive exercise for us, working closely with our customers, and we were able to deliver some network tariffs, new network tariffs for those customers, which weren't adopted straight away by the AER, so a bit of work to be done there. So I guess more in a partnership with some of our customer groups, we didn't get as far as we wanted to collectively when it came to some of those tariffs, and we weren't happy that we couldn't get all of those implemented as quickly as we would have liked to. However, what I would say is that the Queensland Government have taken that up as well and are doing an out of session determination for retail prices in Queensland in the ergon patch. And we expect that that will deliver great benefits for particularly those segments of our customers that wanted to take up new styles of tariff, whether it was demand, time of use, and also importantly for our agriculture customers, allowing them to access our load control tariffs for larger customers. So while that's something that we might not have been happy about, that we didn't get exactly what we wanted at the time, I think it has demonstrated that great collaboration that we've had with the agriculture sector particularly, and how we've been able to work with the regulator and our other partners to deliver on something that they wanted in the future. So wasn't delivered in the last period, but we're going to see those prices come out on the 1st of November from the Queensland Competition Authority. So that's an example where we might not have been exactly happy with how quickly things have gone, but we can see certainly some good benefits in the future.
Thank you. Well, unless Rod or Michael, Mark, you want to add anything, I'll throw it open to questions. And I know, Sandra, you would want to take up the whole issue of affordability in terms of it's raised already. So do you want to go next?
Sure. Thanks, Claire, and good afternoon, everybody. Great to have received your disclosure. And look, I do want to congratulate you on the reconciliation plan. You know, that is an achievement to have that kind of endorsement from Reconciliation Australia, and so it's really great to see that. And look, we're obviously all very concerned about the scale of the change in people's financial position, and we all predict, of course, that the problem is pretty big right now, and there is a real risk that it's only going to get bigger, particularly as housing affordability becomes even worse for people. It's unpredictable, right? What's going to happen to jobs and incomes. And so I did want to drill down a bit into to what extent you have actually done your own assessment about the scale of the problem. I mean, you do have, energy companies have a very particular insight into what's going on in people's households and budgets. And, it's a real red flag, yeah? So if you could just talk a bit to your ability to actually do a fresh assessment of the scale of where people are at and your predictions about what you might be facing and what measures you've got in place. The financial inclusion plan, of course, again, is great, but, it's now like, okay, this is a whole scale of need that we're potentially going to try to be responding to. And whether you see that you'll come under significant pressure yourself about how you're going to deal with the level of financial distress for people. Mark, would you like to take it first?
Do you want me to kick off,
yeah.
Or did you want to make?
Yeah,
I'll go then.
The assessment of the problem and predicting what you might be needing to deal with and how on the front foot you feel about it.
Yep, so absolutely. Certainly it is going to be a big challenge going forward, particularly once things like JobKeeper and other metrics start to fall away or other support mechanisms fall away. What we've done, though, is already do a lot of work at the beginning to make sure that we could do a few things. One, that we were getting some assistance very early on to customers, which is why, very different to other states, the Queensland government provided rebates through electricity retailers to all households, to all small and medium businesses, just to assist them to provide the acknowledgement that we understood that there was an issue and they understood that there was an issue, and we were there to help them. We also, as a business, very quickly moved out into the customer space and provided some assurance that while people were working at home, that we understood that there might be a challenge around interruptions to supply. So we made sure that our customers knew that we were there for them. We understood that that was an issue, and that we would only be doing emergency works because, of course, safety is always our #1 priority. So we established quite early on that there were particular issues for our customers, and we were listening to those issues and we would respond. And this was very much brought out in the metrics around our Voice of the Customer program, where we saw a significant shift in the positive direction from our customers in terms of the support that they were getting from our business. Moving forward, we already had quite a good payment plan arrangement and hardship program that we had been recognised for some years, but we made sure that we beefed that up with the resources from our contact centre to support customers, realising that they were in a number of different circumstances, whether it was the retail businesses versus industry versus households. And as I said earlier, we made sure we were ready for the complexity around that, because we have a whole range of ways that we can support customers, whether it was pausing bills, whether it was payment plans, whether it was making sure there was an appropriate tariff analysis for them, making sure they were aware of all of the other rebates that were available. We also this year, again, based on an assumption that not all customers across the state were accessing pensioner rebates, and in Queensland you only have to have a healthcare card and you can get a $300 discount off your bill. We had a hypothesis that not everybody was accessing that, because of course we know that some customers are not literate enough to know how to even ask for that. So we did two things. We did a significant campaign across our networks as well as our retailer to make sure that customers were aware of what they could ask for and how easy it was to do that. Secondly, we made sure that there were modifications done to our online portal through what we call My Account, and it was the first retailer that allowed customers to actually apply for the rebate online through their electricity portal. So that was a change that was made that got a lot of uptake. And what we did with COVID as well is we made sure we publicised for those that had the access to online billing, and obviously that's not for everybody, which is why it's not our only channel. We still provide paper bills and don't charge anyone for that and never have. But we drove people to the online portal so that they could see that they'd received their rebate from us, and then it encouraged them to look at what other rebates might be available for them. We also, for our Indigenous communities where there's card-operated meters, negotiated with the government that every householder in a card-operated meter area would likely have somebody in that household that would be eligible. You'd be hard-pressed to find a household in an Indigenous community that wasn't eligible in some way from one person for the healthcare card or another rebate. And what we did is was able to get an agreement for them that we could just program the card-operated meters to directly deliver that rebate without anyone having to apply for it. So there are a few of the things that we've done, but going forward, what we've been looking at is those segments of our customers that we expect will be in difficulty. So no surprise there that the vulnerable customers are one of those categories. And then large households that might end up having both of the employed people in the household not having an income, and then also the retail and those smaller enterprises who some of them in regional Queensland would have been at the margins anyway, but now definitely will be making decisions about the sustainability of their business. And what we're doing is ensuring that with every communication opportunity we have, they're aware of what they can do now to shield themselves against what they might see in the future. So we're heavily encouraging customers to at least pay a little bit of their bill, to continue to have a dialogue with us and ensure that they don't have a big problem there in the future. We've also, in partnership with the government, because we're a government-owned organisation and they get a dividend from us, that dividend goes back to customers in a way. So again, apart from the rebates that were delivered earlier in the year, from September, there's now another rebate of $50 being provided to customers. You know, great for householders, not so great for business. But we certainly have an eye for what those customers are that might be challenged in the future, and ensure that we've got the mechanisms to support them.
Thanks, Michael. Just a follow-up on that. Can you just speak a bit to the thing of the sort of the metrics and assessing the scale of it's like at what point is a sort of a financial literacy approach not going to do it, you know, I mean, it's great to hear that level of proactive communication, and you're proactively trying to connect and segment who is going to be having trouble paying their bills rather than relying on a reactive process only. What we're predicting is we're going to see a whole lot of people who are not, they've never had to try and negotiate bills before, you know, this is the first time they've not been able to meet their bills generally, and so it'll be a whole new world in a sense. So but I think the bit about, for example, energy efficiency, other ways that are actually within the customer's control to try and reduce the size of their bill, what you've got in the pipeline or underway on that front. Can you speak a bit to that?
Did you want to dive in first, Rod, or I can keep going?
If you want to respond to that, I've got a couple of comments to make a follow-up.
Thanks.
So yes, absolutely, Cassandra. It's not just about those things where we see people might be in financial stress. So for us, there's a whole range of things that we do for customers, whether they're vulnerable or otherwise, to help them manage their bills. So we've got a range of programs, some of them funded by the Queensland government, where we specifically deal with those customers. So you might have seen, if it's in this report, we've got an Energy Savvy Families program where a whole range of vulnerable customers, mainly in consultation with QCOS and other social organisations, we provide them a smart meter and tools to be able to manage their bill. And that gives a whole heap of alerts as to what it is that might be happening with their billing so that they can manage their bill. In addition, we have the option for monthly billing as well, and a whole range of particular products with our retailer, such as Smooth Pay, which works with customers to determine what their predicted bill would be and to break that down into bite-sized chunks for them. So an area of vulnerable customer focus there. Another program that we have is Sunny Savers, where public housing tenants are able to opt into a program with the Queensland government and us, where solar gets put in on houses that they don't own, and they're able to benefit from that. In addition, the Queensland government, with our support, has also rolled out a range of support packages for owners of residential properties where they have tenants, where there's a shared arrangement with a discount for installation for solar, but that there's rental reductions as a result to support those customers. So we certainly do look across the whole breadth of our customer segments to ensure that we're looking at programs that might support them. From an energy efficiency perspective, we have a number of tools that we provide for our customers so that they can see, oh, well, you know, I've got a fridge that's not working here as well as it should be. What are some of the things that householders should look out for? With our tariffs as well, though, we are looking at delivering a range of tariffs that will help many households by shifting their energy consumption from peak periods to non-peak periods. You can call it a solar soak as well, so that we're utilising the great work that some customers have done with solar that's bringing about those $0 pool prices that you will have heard of during the day. We're looking at taking advantage of that and ensuring that customers can get lower bills by moving their usage to the middle of the day. Of course, though, that relies on a whole heap of education and support mechanisms to ensure that our customers aren't getting bill shock in the summer months as well, where they might be utilising it during that period. So I guess I would say from our customer strategy, there's a whole range of different programs that we have to try and deal with every piece, because we always say that you know, the kilowatt that's not used is the cheapest kilowatt that we save.
Sure.
For our business, it means we're not building more network, and then that's not being distributed across all customers as well.
Yeah, and thank you. Look, I was just trying to get a sense of whether you're worried about your ability to respond to what's happening under, you know, this is a dramatic change in people's economic circumstances we're dealing with. But in the interest of time, Claire, Rod, you know, maybe we can come back to that if needed. So I'm in your hands, Claire, as well. And Rod, whether you wanted to comment. Thanks, Michael.
Yes, Rod, why don't you comment, and then I'm going to go to Andrew Richards to take this up and some other issues.
So just in support of Michael touched on our approach, especially with particularly vulnerable customers. And one of the things that I've enjoyed most in my my short tenure with Energy Queensland is the chance of I've taken the chance to actually visit with all of our call centres, both our network call centres that deal with customers who are inquiring around their connection or disconnection of their premises, where I've been able to double jack, that is to sit on the call with some of our operators, having those conversations with customers, and to do that both in Townsville and in Rockhampton, and also in Newstead and Brisbane, but also of course our retail call centres in those locations. We're the only retailer that actually has all of our call centres actually here in Australia, in Queensland, and of course in regional areas, providing sort of regional employment. So apart from that, in Rockhampton, I had the great pleasure of spending time with vulnerable customer unit that's based in Rockhampton in our offices there, and I was quite struck by the compassion and the diligence of those people who deal with customers under the most awful circumstances. So I guess from a CEO's perspective, I'm quite heartened that we've got people who really care about our customers. They spend a lot of time trying to solve their problems, whether it's either a network issue or a retail issue, and particularly that we've got a dedicated unit with some fantastic people who are just so connected to looking after people.
One of the things that also gives the board comfort is that it's a structured approach. So Michael and his team have done a lot of work over the past 12 months to put good structures in place, not only to understand our client base through the customer segmentation framework, which the team has put in place. That's understanding each of our categories of customers in order that we can service them as efficiently and as effectively as possible, but also with the development of a customer advocacy framework as well, to get the feedback that we need as an organisation to drive internal change. So those structures are very, very important in dealing with those concerns that you've raised in how we deal with vulnerable customers during these tough, unprecedented times.
Thanks very much, Mark.
Thanks.
Andrew Richards?
Thanks, folks. Just by way of a quick follow-up from Matt, hopefully we're through the worst of COVID, but if we're not, if the worst is still to come by way of a debt tsunami or some other form of impact, have we got any bullets left to fire? And what else would you be advising government do or doing yourselves if this is not as bad as it gets, if it gets worse than this? What have we got left?
I'll dive. And look, of course, we always want to be optimistic, Andrew, but we always need to be prepared for the worst. So I think from a business perspective, as I've said, we're just monitoring things very closely, and we've been making sure those customer segments think there could be vulnerability, that we're in touch with them and that they're connected with us, at least making some payments to ensure that they don't end up with a huge debt burden down the path. When it comes to government, obviously we're a government-owned organisation. They've taken some particular measures and governments are obviously considering that. Of course, our partnerships with our regulators, such as the AER, to ensure that there is a sort of a safety net for customers from that perspective is great to see, and those things are being further considered. However, we don't rely just on the safety net, which is why we already had a hardship program for business customers, which was not a feature of other retailers across the country necessarily. And we'd already considered where it was that we need to focus our effort, realising that there will be potentially a problem in the future. What is good in Queensland is that I also look after the connections for our business as well from the network perspective. And what we have seen is more requests for connections and jobs than ever before. So while there might be a little bit of a softening in the retail space, you might have heard that there's plenty of people in communities that you might be familiar with, like Sydney and Melbourne, that are really buying up big in regional Queensland. So we have been inundated with developer applications to open up developments in Queensland, particularly in regional Queensland. It's no surprise that the gold price has gone up, and we're seeing a lot of mines that are asking for additional capacity. So we've actually seen a huge growth in connections work across the state. As I say, it's not in every single segment, but it is way over and above where it's been in the past. In addition, the big stimulus from both the state and the federal government for roads, for rail and other projects requires realignment of our network as well. And with that comes a lot of jobs, direct and indirect. So look, I think there's some good stimulus there that will go for some time. There will be some segments where there will be an issue, and we are poised, ready to support that. And already there's been some rebates and mechanisms rolled out. So I guess what I would probably say is I'd like to be a glass half full like you. I am a little bit worried about the roll-off of some support mechanisms, but we are certainly ready there to support our customers and wherever necessary, provide data to government and regulators that will support them in further decisions they may need to make.
Look, I like your enthusiasm and your hope, Michael, and I similarly hope that you're correct. If I could just sort of change tack a little bit, can I congratulate you on a fair bit of honesty that you showed in your disclosure, in particular, the fact that you've rated yourself as emerging in a couple of categories, which I think is probably an honest assessment of where most are at, rather than saying that we're fantastic and we've crossed the finish line already. In particular, embedding the customer culture, I think you've identified there that that's an emerging part of the business, and you've talked about the need to do more there. So part one of the question is, what else are you doing there to embed the culture within the organisation, that customer first culture within the organisation? Then from a business point of view, I'm wondering if you can talk about what you've learned from, it might be before your time, Michael and Rod, but last year there was a bit of a false start on demand tariffs for medium-sized business, and it caused a lot of confusion, a lot of concern out there, and that was then withdrawn, and we've gone through a new process. So what have you learnt from that, which will also help you embed a more customer-centric culture? So it's that two-part question.
So I might, and then Rod will have his view on what's happened as well. I think particularly in that customer culture and metrics space where we assessed ourselves as emerging, you'll be the judge as to whether we are benchmarked against others, and I wish you well on your deliberations and meetings there. So in that particular area, obviously we have a Voice of the Customer program. We survey 15,000 direct touch points every year with our customers to develop the metrics on that. We also do a survey across our whole employee base in terms of customer enablement, and that's about, do our people have the tools to do the job that they need to do? So we get obviously some qualitative information and quantitative information out of that, and we make changes as a result. We also embed in all of our leaders' performance agreements a rating around our customer index and our performance around that, meeting those KPIs. So that's a great measure. In terms of the example that you used with those demand tariffs, I actually see that as a positive, because it was a way that we were going through the tariff process with the AER. We consulted with our customer groups, maybe not as extensively in some areas as we could have. And as a result, through their feedback, we then changed that, and we've emerged with, I think, tariffs that will deliver great benefits for them in the future. We also had to really push the regulatory arrangements there. Their very flat economic approach to tariffs was very much questioned by us, with support from the customer groups, particularly for those very large industrial customers like foundries and others that are providing jobs in regional Queensland, and we believe that there needed to be a transition to cost reflectivity and for the regulator to consider that. So that's something we will continue to pursue where it makes sense.
Yeah, it's good to hear, Michael, because there was a fair bit of concern around how that was being approached previously, and perhaps that sort of that blockage at the AR wasn't really discussed or explained, but I'm glad you've been able to revisit that and back in contact with those sort of medium-sized industrial customers, because you're right, they are major employers in places like Maryvale and elsewhere that we need to make sure that and Bundaberg as two examples, to make sure we make sure they're sustainable so they can continue to employ the people who can then pay the bills.
And I should just say a bit of a PS there too, that, you know, the AER came on that journey as well. So they're very much on the tariff side, were partnering with us also to understand the unique characteristics of some of those customers, which is why we came up with the individually calculated approach, understanding those individual characteristics, which was not a normal approach that would be taken. So it was good to see that we could give the evidence to have something a little bit different. Yeah,
I think as we understand, a lot of our industrial base is quite old. The facilities are quite old, and they're not able to reutilised or retooled very quickly or very easily. So making sure there's that transition is very important. Thank you.
Now, we're seriously running out of time, so I'm going to enforce some speed dating from here. So quick questions and quick answers, if that's all right. Andrew, did you have any other questions?
Oh, I don't know if I can get a quick answer out of it, though. It's about net zero emissions by 2050 and how that's impacting and how you're going to manage that. Perhaps when I'm allowed to leave the house and get in an aeroplane, it'd be great to talk to you guys about that, because it is an emerging, it's an issue here and now, particularly with long-lived assets like yours and stranded asset risk and those sorts of things. So it's probably a good conversation. In the interest of time, don't have to answer that, guys. I'll put it on the table.
Look, I wanted to ask Rod as CEO and Mark as a board member just about, you're a signatory to the Charter. Not all energy companies are, and we know that it requires time, money, resources, effort from you and your staff. And so from both your perspectives, what is it about the Charter that you think matters and why you are members, and where you'd like to be sitting here in 12 months' time in terms of the Charter and its aspirations?
Well, I guess a bit like the consumers, the jury's still out for me. I'd like to think that it's going to be of ongoing and increasing value to customers as well as to the businesses that serve those customers. But I think that probably it's only been in place now, as I understand, for a couple of years. This is my first involvement with it, and I'm sort of learning and listening and trying to understand what being a member means and what the beneficial outcomes are that will come out of both participating in and actually having a group of organisations that form the Energy Charter. Time will be our judge.
Michael, Mark.
Yeah, practically speaking, what the Charter does, this is a personal opinion, not so much a board opinion, but we see customer and the management of our customers as a business as usual activity. That is, our customers should be at the centre of our thinking and should be at the centre of our planning to be a sustainable and successful business. What the Charter does is sharpen that focus and hold us accountable and provide a mechanism for us to actually explain what initiatives we are putting in place and what successes we are seeing as a consequence of being focused, taking a customer-centric approach to the way that we run our business.
Thank you. And this time next year, what would you like to be telling us?
Look, from a personal opinion, I think the introduction of the maturity assessment model as disclosed in our report, is a good thing. And I would like to see progress against that model. We're emerging in one particular area, which we just discussed before. We're evolved or empowered in those other areas, but it would be good to see, as a board member, progress and advancement across those 5 elements next year.
And has the whole issue of customer metrics increased at a board level, Mark? Is that a change?
Yes.
For the board?
Well, prior to the charter being introduced, we had customer metrics, and those metrics exist today. What it does do, though, is it sharpens the board's focus on those metrics in order that we understand exactly how we're performing. A lot of those metrics are and have been in the past quantitative in terms of the information that's provided. One of the things, and I touched on it briefly before, with some of the initiatives that we've got in place, is actually understanding the feedback, so that more the qualitative feedback that we're receiving from our customers and advocates that are key stakeholders of ours within the industry, because with that feedback, it actually drives change. You can see as many metrics as you want, but unless you're getting that qualitative feedback from advocates and from customers themselves, it's hard to put tangible solutions in place. And I suppose for us, the complaints management process, the complaints reporting process, the closeout of those complaints in a satisfactory manner are really important initiatives for us, because that's what drives change within these organisations. And you can't drive meaningful change that has a positive impact on communities and customers without actually knowing from the horse's mouth, as it were, what those problems are.
Look, I was going to make that point myself about the importance of complaints and the importance of board members, of them seeing complaints at that level, what they're saying about customer, the voice, any systemic issues, trends in complaints, all that sort of thing. Look, we've run out of time. I just need to ask Cassandra and Andrew, is there any other burning question that we haven't asked at this stage?
Not from me, Claire, thanks.
Not from me.
Okay.
Claire?
And any last very short words from any of you?
Well, thank you for the opportunity to participate, and we look forward to seeing, I guess, the results and feedback that we can receive and what we can learn from it.
Thank you. All right. Well, thank you very much for your time and for the disclosure. Yes, we'll talk to you again with the CEO Council in time. So thank you very much for today.
Thanks,
Thank
guys.
you.
Thanks, Claire. Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, everybody. Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you.